The strength of the ArmyPainter Warpaints Fanatic is also its weakness, and I'll tell you why. If you're still in the fence of getting a Warpaints Fanatic set, you might want to watch this video. To show a more accurate look of what the Warpaints Fanatic paints can do, I did zero glazing with the painting of this bust. We'll discuss the strengths and the main weakness of Warpaints Fanatic in this video. You'll also see the painting of the skin, the gold NMM, and a little bit of the hair painting. The model featured here is a 3D printed bust from Clay Cyanide. So join me as we turn this bust into this and learn a little bit more about Warpaints Fanatic. First and foremost, ArmyPainter sponsors me, but they don't need to approve or see this video before you do. I can upload without asking for approval. I'm Don, welcome to my channel. This channel is supported by all these awesome brands. Also, special thanks to TheArmyPainter for making this video possible. I've been using Warpaints Fanatic for 10 months now, and I must admit that I kinda struggled while still learning how to use them in the first couple of months. Warpaints Fanatic are regular acrylic paints, and the speed paints are, I consider those specialty acrylic paints. Regular acrylic paints from Vallejo, AK, and of course Citadel are practically like they have their own nuances, but they're all the same. The specialty acrylic paints or specialty paints would be contrast paints, express colors, maybe inks, and of course speed paints. I also consider cuttlefish colors as specialty paints. They're perfect for glazing. I think the main reason why I kinda struggled while still learning how to paint with Warpaints Fanatic in the first couple of months is that I came from painting with cuttlefish colors. Cuttlefish colors are great paints, they're semi-transparent, they're glazed paints, but they're like the extreme opposite of Warpaints Fanatic. Now you could see in the video that the painting of the skin is very textured, it's very painterly, and the strokes are very obvious. Creating textures with Warpaints Fanatic is one of its strengths. It's practically, the feeling is like you're drawing with these paints. Of course, you could do some glazing on top so that you soften your layering and texturing, but I intentionally did not do glazing so that you could see the actual finish with Warpaints Fanatic. Because of the very good coverage of Warpaints Fanatic, you'll find it a little bit difficult to do good blending as you do layering. If you're used to paints from other brands which have like lesser coverage, meaning when you do layering, those like semi-transparent paints will kind of blend from each other as you do layering. With Warpaints Fanatic, you can't do that unless you thin it down into like a more glazy consistency. Now in this part of the video, you'll see me painting the gold NMM. Again, similar to the painting of the skin, I did not do any glazing. The best way, most natural way of creating good blending with Warpaints Fanatic is to mix the previous color with the current color. In this manner, you create more paints, you create more colors and nuances, and thus, as you build up your layering, you create nice blending. Most of the other acrylic brands are just in the middle of the pack in terms of coverage. So, when you're doing layering with other brands, you kinda produce good layering because they're semi-transparent. This simply means that blending as you do layering takes a little bit more effort when you're using Warpaints Fanatic. Basically, you have to weaken the coverage of Warpaints Fanatic so that you have semi-transparent paints, thin it down a little bit more than usual so that your layering has a little bit more good blending. This also means that even if you have other acrylic paints already, if you get a small or like a handful of Warpaints Fanatic, you could use them differently than your existing paint collection. Since your Warpaints Fanatic has way better coverage than your existing paints, you could simply use it for your base colors and then you could do layering with your existing paints. So Warpaints Fanatic are great for detail painting, base colors, and of course highlighting. Because of the good coverage, you really see the definition of each of your paint strokes or paint strokes. But in terms of layering and glazing, you have to use Warpaint Stabilizer or really get used to thinning Warpaints Fanatic. And the really not weird, but the main difference of Warpaints Fanatic, even if you thin it down, it still has good coverage. So you have to thin it down a little bit more than usual. Now we are painting hair and fur. This requires good definition and pretty good coverage of your paints. You have to thin down Warpaints Fanatic a little bit when you're painting hair because you want good flow when you're painting nice lines as you paint along the sculpt. Thinning down your Warpaints Fanatic when painting hair may take a little getting used to, but once you get the hang of it, you will enjoy painting hair. The two most important factors when painting hair is to make sure that you paint along the sculpt so that your painting complements the miniature. And then the second one is to make sure that your lines get thinner as the colors get lighter so that you create volume. Another thing is that you don't really have to do glazing when you're painting hair and fur because you don't want to soften your very fine lines. You want very good definition with your hair painting and very nice fine lines. Now, before my final thoughts, don't forget to subscribe and a huge thanks to all my patrons, to Hajime Model Studio, and of course, The Army Painter for making this video possible. The strength of Warpaints Fanatic, the really good coverage, can also be its weakness. The strength will yield really good results, especially if you like sketchy painting style. It's really good for base colors, detail painting, and highlighting. However, you might struggle a little bit in terms of layering and of course glazing. So it's both its strength and its weakness. Now, after watching this video and you're still in the fence of getting Warpaints Fanatic, you should be, because I'm a sponsored Army Painter artist. But I do highly recommend you try a bottle or two of Warpaints Fanatic and see if the extreme coverage works for you. I have a huge collection of acrylic paints since I was sponsored since 2013. That's more than 10 years ago. So I have a lot of paints. And I assure you that if you get Warpaints Fanatic, they are different or a little bit different than the usual paint brands. The extreme coverage will not be redundant to your existing paint collection and it will complement the the weaker coverage of other paints. I hope you saw in this video the build-up of the layering and the painting of the textures, the definition of the paint strokes that kind of complemented each other without the use of glazing or without glazing on top. So I hope you saw that you could produce really good painting even without glazing or blending with Warpaints Fanatic. Even though I did zero glazing in the painting of this Clay Cyanide bust, sketch and glaze or layering and then glazing is still my go-to technique. Like I said earlier, it takes a little getting used to thinning down your Warpaints Fanatic so that it has more transparency. However, you could simply use your existing paints or existing acrylic paints so that you do layering with those paints and then you go back to using Warpaints Fanatic when you need to paint the highlights and the details. That's it, Pansit. I hope you like this video. Do like, comment, subscribe, and all that stuff. Until next video, guys. Bye! If you like this video, you might like these other videos.